You know, he's often called the last great emperor of ancient India, King Harsha. But what if I told you that powerful legend of this one ruler uniting a totally fractured land isn't quite the whole story? Today we're going to peel back the layers of myth to get to the reality and uncover the true legacy of a king whose real influence was way more subtle and honestly far more lasting than his empire.
So picture this. It's the 6th century CE. The mighty Gupta Empire, this was a force that held much of India together for centuries. Well, it's just collapsed. And in its place, a massive void. The map of North India has basically shattered into a dozen warring pieces, and every single one is scrambling to fill that power vacuum.
And that's the real puzzle here, isn't it? When an empire of that scale just disappears, what comes next? How does anyone restore order? And who has the ambition, or maybe just the sheer luck, to build something new from all those ruins?
Okay, so to really get Harsha's rise, you first have to understand the world he was born into. With the Guptas gone, North India was completely fractured. It wasn't one kingdom anymore. It was, well, a chaotic mosaic of competing territories, all fighting for a piece of the pie.
With no central power keeping things in check, regional dynasties like the Maukaris and the Pushabhutis, that's Harsha's family by the way, they all rose up carving out their own little kingdoms. And this sparked an age of, well, relentless warfare. Everybody was fighting everybody for dominance. And all the while, the grand old imperial capital, Pataliputra, was basically becoming a ghost of its former self. A new era was dawning, and it demanded a new center of power.
And that new center? It would be a city called Kannauj. Power was shifting. It was literally moving away from the old imperial heartlands and toward this new, strategic location that would come to define the politics of North India for centuries to come. And the contrast between the old and the new couldn't be more stark. Pataliputra's trade routes were drying up, its political clout was just fading. But Kannauj? Oh, it was strategically perfect. It was sitting in the super fertile plains between two major rivers, built on high ground so it was easy to defend, and it was right at the crossroads of all the new land and river trade routes. This place, this was the future.
You know, this era also gave us this brand new concept of a capital, the Jayaskandhavara, which literally means camp of victory. Now think of it less like a city and more like a mobile seat of power. Instead of being tied down to one place, a king's authority moved with his army. And this was a radical shift, right? Power was no longer static. It was all about military presence and strategic control on the move.
All right, so into this chaotic, shifting world steps our main character. But Harsha didn't just inherit a stable, peaceful kingdom. Oh no, his path to power was sudden, it was violent, and it was born from a completely devastating family tragedy that would end up changing the course of Indian history.
What happens next is just this breathtakingly fast cascade of disasters. As Harsha's father is lying on his deathbed, terrible news arrives. His brother-in-law, the king of Kannauj, has been murdered. His sister, she's been thrown in prison. So Harsha's older brother, Rajyavardhana, marches off to avenge them. He actually succeeds, only to be cut down by treachery himself. In the span of just a few weeks, a 16-year-old Harsha is left with a shattered family and a kingdom teetering on the absolute edge of oblivion.
And then comes the turning point. The nobles of Kannauj, now kingless, they offer their throne to Harsha. By accepting, he doesn't just get to avenge his family, he unites two powerful kingdoms under one banner. It's incredible. Out of this profound personal tragedy comes this huge political consolidation, and just like that, Kannauj is now officially the heart of this new rising power.
So, this dramatic origin story became the foundation of a really powerful legend. But, as with all great legends, we have to put on our historian hats and ask, how much of it is actually historical fact? And to find the answer, we need to look really closely at the people who told the story in the first place.
See, almost everything we know about Harsha comes from two main sources: his own court poet, a guy named Banabhata, and a visiting Chinese pilgrim, Xuanzang. Now, Banabhata's biography paints Harsha as this flawless hero, of course, and Xuanzang describes a perfectly prosperous kingdom. And while these accounts are totally invaluable, we have to remember their perspective. One was on Harsha's payroll, and the other was his honored guest. Their accounts are less subjective history and more like, well, glowing testimonial.
This title, Sakalatsarpataswara, really helps cement his legendary status. But what makes it so powerful is where it comes from. This wasn't a title Harsha gave himself. It was used to describe him by the successors of his greatest rival, the Chalukya king Pulakesin II. And let's be honest,
When even your enemy's descendants are calling you the warlike lord of all the north, your reputation is pretty much secure.
But when modern historians dig past all the poetry and praise, the reality on the ground is a bit more sobering. Harsha's kingdom, while definitely formidable, was far from controlling all of North India. His domain was mostly limited to parts of modern UP, Bihar, and Odisha. Over to the east, his rival Sashanka blocked him for years. And to the south, his expansion was famously crushed by the powerful king Polikesin II.
So, if he wasn't the last great emperor in terms of sheer territory, what was his real, lasting legacy? Well, the answer isn't in the size of his empire, but in the city he chose as its heart.
And this, right here, is where we find his true genius. Harsha's lasting achievement wasn't conquering vast lands. It was transforming the city of Kannauj into the undisputed symbol of imperial power. He made it so prestigious, so important, that to control Kannauj meant you were seen as the master of North India. He forged a political prize so coveted that future empires would clash over it for centuries.
And if you need proof of this legacy, look no further than the tripartite struggle. For an entire century after Harsha died, 3 of the subcontinent's mightiest dynasties, the Pratiharas, the Palas, and the Rashtrakutas, basically bled each other dry in a relentless war. And what was their goal? The capture of a single city, Kannauj. Harsha himself was long gone, but the shadow he cast over that city was so massive, it defined the next era of Indian history. So, Harsha's story leaves us with this really fascinating puzzle. His actual empire was smaller than the legend says, but his true legacy, the status of the city of Kannauj, ended up shaping India for centuries. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What's more powerful in the end, the deeds of a king or the story that gets told about him?